Hi there, nice to see you. Bumblebee tuna?
Got room for one more if you still want to go to Aspen.
You're trying your best, but it never feels like enough.
I'm your huckleberry.
Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there,
How dare you!
all guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want!
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion is advised.
You talk about extreme.
If knowledge is a crime, we were guilty from the start. They don't fear the questions, they fear the spark. So we steal the fire, not to rule, not to reign, just to see through smoke and mirrors and call the beast by name. They call it dangerous thinking, they call it heresy. But fire doesn't fear the dark, it only shows what's real.
Hey guys, what is happening? What is up? Hey, hold out that glass, baby. You know what time it is. Welcome to the Prometheus Lens Podcast, a place where the conversations are always enlightening. I'm your host, Doc Brown, and here we like to use the allegory of the Prometheus Lens to take a second look at everything. Well, hey guys, if you are new to this channel, hey, welcome guys. Welcome to the hero's journey, and hey, become a member of the Promethean Night Fire fam. Hey, we always got room for one more if you want to go to Aspen, baby. But hey, while I got your attention, guys, please, could you take a moment and just check this out, man? This is banner right here. It's got all of our social medias at all their various platforms. Man, please go check that out. I'm getting, like 500,000 impressions a month now. Praise the Lord. All praise to God. Thousands of subscribers. I never thought I'd be here, but my social medias are terrible. It does not reflect my viewership, folks. So if you guys listen to the show, you enjoy the show, and you are on any of these social media platforms, please come find me and sign up. I'm putting out reels and knowledge nuggies every single day. I would much appreciate that, guys and gals and long distance pals. For all my Dig Bible podcast people, But man, I got a great show for you guys, and I'm going to start off with Happy Valentine's Day. Hey, did you guys catch that? For those that's maybe an inside joke for some people, but no, happy St. Patrick's Day, okay? I put out a funny reel with me wearing a leprechaun hat with a red beard, and done my best to do an Irish accent, and I ended it with saying, Happy Valentine's Day, you lucky devil. So yeah, inside joke. Now you are on the inside, so you're welcome. But man, let me cut this music, and we'll get into it, man. And I got a really good show for you guys today. And this was something, it was kind of last minute. I wish that I would have gotten this stuff together and made the thumbnail and actually promoted this thing a little better. That way maybe more people would have been here for the live, because this is kind of a last minute thing here. But no, I've always wanted to try to take the show and cover holidays and things that are kind of hidden or not, well known. Last year I did one on Valentine's Day, and so I wanted to do one on St. Patrick's Day. And I kept putting it off, and I was researching, taking some notes and stuff like I usually do. And I have been rereading Nicholas de Vere's The Dragon Legacy. And I found something in there, guys, that is just jaw-dropping. The Nephilim and the Serpent Seed is tied into the story of St. Patrick. And it's not so obvious either. And it's kind of hidden in the etymology of the words. So when I found this in that book, that really sparked me, man. I'm like, I have to do this. But of course, that was probably about 24 to 36 hours ago. So I had to rush and slam this thing together, guys. So I got my notes here. I'm going to speak off the dome best I can, but I have my notes here, so you might see me kind of looking to the side and reading. I apologize for that. I didn't have enough time dedicated to memorize all this stuff to memory. But this is going to be a banger of a show, guys. I'm telling you right now. But let me check in with the chat with you guys and see what's happening. I've already threw up some comments on here. I got some of my ride or die people in here. I got Dunt, I got Anna, so many people, man, that you guys are just amazing friends. I hate that word fans. I have no fans. I have friends. I have fellow researchers and friends. So thank you for coming. And Kevin, man, my bro Kevin, shout out to Kevin from Where the Weird Ones Are. He's actually starting a documentary film, and he's asked me to be a part of it. So when he gets that rolling, I might be heading up to Maine and doing some filming and helping him with some edits and stuff in any way that I can. So excited about that. Actually, if you do follow me on social media, like I suggested earlier, I shared a reel linking to his I can't remember if it's, I don't think it's a GoFundMe, it's a Kickstarter. He's running a Kickstarter. If you guys want to support the documentary, I know he would greatly appreciate that. Oh, Anna, I didn't even realize you were doing an Irish accent. What are you trying to say? I sound Irish anyway? I was like, you lucky devil. that was the best I had, so I swung for the fences. You are the banger, he says. NRS from Texas, hey, welcome. I don't think I've seen your name in the chat before, so I don't know if you're a new listener or just a new commenter, but either way, I appreciate you coming and hanging out. And I'm going to get started here. I had to throw up Steven, my bro from the Biblical Hitman. We just released a banger of an episode about Jeffrey Epstein and the Baal worship. If you guys haven't checked that out, that is a banger, like I said before. But man, let's get into the topic, because I'm telling you guys, I'm excited for this, to show you guys my golden nuggets that I found. So, now, St. Patrick's Day. The whole modern commercialization, has turned it into a day of parades, drinking green beer, and leprechauns and pots of gold, following the rainbow to the pot of gold to this little green man. And if you are around my age, leprechauns have been burned and scorn into your nightmares because of those horror films back in the day, all the little leprechaun movies. Man, that guy was freaky looking, scared me to death. So yeah, if you are around my age and generation, remember those leprechaun movies, that has definitely scarred your memory when it comes to leprechauns. But this was a pagan, kind of tradition or memory, I guess is a better way to put it, and it was turned into a Christian memorial for a Christian saint. So this, of course, is Saint Patrick, and I really didn't know much about his story. I knew the general stuff, so this was really fun to dive into this and see where it come from, the stories and the mythology and the legends attached to this saint. And so let's just dive into this, guys, without further ado. Okay, when I was looking at this, back in ancient times, Ireland was actually known as Hibernia. And it was kind of known as to be the land of perpetual winter. It was a really rugged, desolate type landscape that it was either raining or snowing, and it was just really harsh, place to be. And the etymology of that word kind of reflects that, the land of winter. So when I dove into Patrick himself, he was born actually in Britain. He's not an Irishman at all. And he was born in Britain when it was under Roman control around 390 A.D. It says as a young boy, though, that the Roman legions had to pull back to Rome because they had to defend against the Central Asians, the Mongols and all these people that were trying to invade Rome. So they had to take all of the Roman soldiers from all these different territories and islands and kind of condense them to defend the homeland. So this was during, the time of St. Patrick. Well, when they drew these, legions back, it left these islands and these other territories very vulnerable. They didn't have the protection of the Roman soldiers and government like they used to. And of course, anytime you have a power vacuum, it creates new opportunities for rebels and rebellions and insurrections and all this type of thing. So this was no exception here. So around this time, he was reported to be around 16 years old. And Ireland was kind of like the Vikings, and I didn't realize this. They were known as pirates and raiders, kind of like the Vikings. So when this happened, a lot of the pirates and shady folks, of Ireland, was open for business again. So they started, getting gangs together and getting ships and started sailing out to, these different territories in their area and started raiding. And they started, raping and pillaging and taking people and just, living it up, So this happened, like I said, when he was around 16 years old, and they were raiding the coastal areas of Britain, and this is where Patrick grew up and lived. And lo and behold, he was captured, and he was taken as a slave back to Ireland, and he was sold as a shepherd's slave to a high, what they call it, a chieftain. He was a druid chieftain, and was sold to him to work in service for him. So that is the whole reason that St. Patrick ended up in Ireland to begin with. His city was raided by Irish pirates, I guess you could say, and was taken as a slave and sold into slavery. So that's how St. Patrick ends up getting into Ireland to begin with. Now, at this time, Ireland was ruled by the druids, and according to legend, they were very rough, rugged people. They were a lot like the Vikings. They were known for their human sacrifices. They were known for their fighting. They were known for their just no fear of death in battle. Some of the Roman legions in their journals and generals talked about they were almost, it seemed as though that they were possessed by demons and had no fear of death. So this is a really rugged place and time that he was brought into this country. So, and what's funny too is I actually started rewatching that show Vikings. And as I was reading this story of St. Patrick, it reminded me a lot of Athelstan. And for those that's not familiar, in that show Vikings, they're raiders. They go out and they start raiding, and, but they believed the earth was flat and that you would fall off the edge, so they just kept going east. And they'd only raid the same places all the time. So Ragnar Lothbrok, the main character, become uneasy. He was an adventurer. You know, he wanted to go west and see what was west. And he ends up doing so, and he finds Britain. And when he goes to Britain, he comes across the first monasteries. And of course, you know, the Catholics, you know, you paid for penance. You know, you bought your forgiveness of sins and bought your way into heaven. So the church was doing really well. They had lots of gold. So when these Vikings showed up, they popped up at this monastery. There was no armies. There was no weapons. It was just these guys running around with, shaved circles on top of their heads and robes and gold everywhere. So they just, raided and had a good old time out of those guys. But when you go and you watch that story, they end up, Ragnar ends up finding this priest. And this priest is Athelstan. And for some reason, he ends up taking Athelstan as a prisoner of war, as a slave, and ends up keeping him for himself, but ultimately ends up using him to learn more about the language and the culture of the people to help his future raids. But even the character development is very similar to Patrick, because Athelstan, he struggles with his faith, but he ends up converting some of the pagans to Christianity, and Ragnar being one of them. I mean, he wasn't a full Christian, but he accepted, Christ and listened to what Athelstan had to say. So here we have St. Patrick. He is taken as a slave and sold into bondage, and ultimately ends up converting an entire country away from pagan beliefs and into Christianity. So I thought that was really, really cool. And just the correlation was right there in front of my face. So I'm sorry for those that have seen that show and they're like, gosh, Doc, you're beating a dead horse. Everybody knows about Athelstan. Everybody knows about Ragnar Lothbrok and the Vikings. But hey, some people might not. So I didn't want to leave those people out to dry. But, Emma, Ragnar was hot. A lot of women thought that. He did have a nice head of hair on him and bright blue eyes, didn't he? That's for sure. And yes, see black ink. The Celtic tribes were brutal. Yes, they were. All right, so now, if I keep going, sorry, I went on a little tangent there. So he sold into slavery to a druidic high chieftain as a shepherd. And he's there. And what's funny is, like I mentioned it briefly earlier, but I'm going to give you some exact quotes here. But to describe these people and their, ferocity and all these types of things, there was some Roman legions, and they reported on these guys in their first encounters with them. So here's a direct quote from some of the Roman soldiers and legions about their encounters with these people. It says, where's it at? In our first encounters with these exposed insane warriors, and they were shocked and frightened. They were howling, and it seemed as though they were possessed by demons. So outrageous was their strength, featuring all the terrors of hell itself. And this was a quote from Thomas Cahill, I believe is how you pronounce that. So the place that St. Patrick was taken to was in the very far reaches of the north, in Northern Ireland. And that is the most treacherous, because of course it's the closest to the north. It's exposed to all the northern headwinds, so they had the worst winters. It was the coldest and the most frigid. All the rain and storms always, seem to hit them first. Anybody that's ever been to Ireland or seen any Irish movies, it's like Seattle. 90% of the time it's raining, it's ugly and wet and cold. So that might contribute to why these people had such bad temperaments. I've jokingly said, I'm a Southern man. I went to Boston last winter, and I made the comment, kind of half jokingly, but I was like, man, no wonder Northerners are such a-holes. If I had to live in this type of weather all the time, I'd be pretty ornery myself. But the most specific location that I can give you as far as the legends and stuff goes is that he was taken in the area of the Slemish Mountains. Like I said, this was in the far reaches of the north. And on St. Patrick's Day, this is on the March 17th, of course, it says people hike to the top of this mountain as a pilgrimage. And they say on a clear day you can see plumb to Scotland. So this is a huge mountain, and it's like a sore thumb. There's lots of plains surrounding, and there's just this huge mountain that you can see. Like I said, it stands out like a sore thumb, and it's so high on a clear day you can see Scotland. So what's up, Midwest Mythos? Riley in the house. I see you, brother. So it says, the druids were fabled for their ruthlessness and their fear-mongering, and it was said that they would post heads on spikes around the region as reminders to those who would think of double-crossing them, and especially their slaves if they tried to escape. And once again, another correlation with the Vikings. The latest episode I just seen, some of the people that they conquered, they took their heads and hung them from the masts of their ships. That way when they rolled into other towns and went upriver, it scared people, made them run away. And also they were known for their human sacrifices, and so it's quite possible that St. Patrick could even seen those famous Wicker Man fires. And this is, the legends and stories written down from the Romans, that these druids would weave these huge statues of these wicker men and load people up inside of them and set them on fire to appease their gods. So it's quite possible while there, St. Patrick actually witnessed these things. But I got in here, it says, imagine enduring not only the hellish weather, the wild wolves and boars that you had to protect these sheep from, because that was his job. Then you had all these signs of death and human sacrifice all around you. So, this guy was literally living in hell. I can only imagine in my deepest, darkest nightmares what it would be like to live during this time with these people. But St. Patrick later wrote in his autobiography, quote, "I did not believe in the living God, nor did I from my childhood, but I lived in death and unbelief until I was severely chastised by hunger and nakedness." So he had to endure hell before accepting heaven. I thought that was pretty profound. But he recorded that his days went in the fields, that he would cry out to God day after day, week after week, and that he actually began to feel the presence of God in his moments of desperation and prayer. And he said that he would easily say 100 prayers in one day while sitting out with the flocks. Like I said, imagine the worst winters, the worst storms. You're living with these ruthless people that are doing human sacrifices. The people that did rebel, or the slaves that did try to run away, they would kill them, make examples of them, and post their heads on spikes all over the place. So, this guy had to experience hell to accept heaven. That's just, like I said, I hate to be repetitive here, but that's just mind-blowing to me. I couldn't imagine. But I put it here. I said, isn't it funny how most of us have to hit rock bottom and be isolated from everything that we know and think that we love to find God? If you are called, he will break you just to rebuild you and make you stronger than ever. So that's kind of encouragement for people going through stuff, man. If you're going through stuff and you're being isolated and torn down and everything taken from you, if you are a follower of God, it's because he's rebuilding you stronger, man. It's the refiner's fire, purifying you like gold. And if you remember, Jesus even told Peter, he said, the devil has requested that he sift you like wheat. And so when they would harvest the wheat, they would, sift and shake it and throw it up into the air. That way the dust would leave and only the good grain would remain. So that's what Jesus was referring to there, that it's the refiner's fire. You're being sifted to be purified and to be better. So this man was definitely going through the refiner's fire. But once again, I was so glad that I did this, because it kind of put me in his shoes and seeing his experiences and give me a better appreciation for the man. So, I hope this does for you also. But one thing, too, is his time in slavery was 6 years. So he had to endure this for 6 long years. And St. Patrick, but in the end, he ended up finding God, right? So there is some silver lining here. But you know who else was strengthened by God through isolation and in the field, guarding sheep? King David. As I was reading that about him, that kind of popped in my mind. I'm like, man, this is just like, King David. He was a shepherd boy and was out in the fields and isolated, left to himself, no one to talk to but God. And God strengthened him there in his moments of isolation. Oh, Anna, yeah. Yeah, she said, when I finally realized I have no control, that I found God. Amen. So, during his time there, he had like I've been mentioning, he wrote an autobiography. So in this autobiography, he says that God came to him in a dream and told him that a ship was waiting 200 miles away and give him a city, and told him to look off toward the coast and to start fasting, that the Lord had provided a ship for him, and that soon he would be supping back home. So he started fasting and preparing himself to leave. And remember, like I said, the constant reminders of their brutality and the heads of slaves that tried to escape. They would brutally beat them to death, chop off their heads, and hang their heads around as displays to discourage people from doing this. So this man had a vision from God, told him that there was a ship waiting for him at this such and such town, and to begin fasting and then to leave. So this man done what the Lord said, and he found this ship, and it ended up taking him back to Britain. And when he did return to Britain, he dedicated his life to the church, joined a monastery, and dedicated almost 20 years of his life in service of God. So this is what shaped the man. Okay? So if you didn't know any of that, take a moment and reflect. If you were taken prisoner, okay, and experienced this hell, would you go back willingly? I sure as hell wouldn't. I'll tell you that right now. And that's how you kind of know when stuff's from God, because it's the exact opposite of what you want. That kind of reminded me, once again, when I read his story, I see so many similarities to other people in the Bible. That's how I know the hand of God was on this man. There's no doubt. I thought of Jonah. Jonah was this prophet, and hung around this city of Nineveh, knew how ruthless they were, the pagan gods they worshipped, and the human sacrifices, passing children to the fires of Molech. And God wanted to save them and told him to go talk to these people and witness to them and tell them to repent. And he didn't want to go. Not only did, I'm sure, did he feel, scared or threatened by these ruthless people, but he didn't want these people to be saved. So for this man to be, subjugated to this brutality and these people and all these things, to turn to God and 20 years later want to return to save their souls, I mean, I could not fathom ever in a million years wanting to do that. I'll be like, "Now, God, I know you love them, man, but can you send somebody else?" I mean, 100. Can you send somebody else, man? So once he gets back to Britain, like I said, he dedicates his life to the priesthood. And for many years, he gets these visions and these dreams from God telling him to return. And after many years, he ends up going back to his captors and turns them from their pagan ways and back into the fold of God. And this, when he returned, this was around 432 AD. So, once again, the ruthlessness and paganism of the land had only increased in his absence. So it got even worse. Imagine being in hell and coming back and it's hotter. Said that he was quoted saying he was ready to die for his faith if need be. Now you might be wondering, where did the shamrock come into play here? I'm glad you asked, because I didn't know neither. Okay, now shamrock, it's not the 4-leaf clover like we always think, like the good luck clover. Shamrock is a 3-leaf clover. And if you noticed on the thumbnail artwork, I incorporated that in there. So I had this, mosaic style picture of St. Patrick holding the shamrock. And if you paid attention to the thumbnail, that was kind of a spoiler for you. Because what he done is he used that shamrock as a teaching tool. Because this was a plant that was indigenous to Ireland, and it was found everywhere. So all the people were familiar with a shamrock and what it was. So he used that to preach and teach and convince these people about the true living God. And how he done that was he used the 3 leaves as a representation of the Holy Trinity in his teachings. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And they understood it. It was something common that everybody knew, and it worked. This was one of the major things used to convert Ireland into Christianity. And this is why the shamrock is so predominant during St. Patrick's Day, because this was his number one teaching tool. And also it's Ireland's symbol. They use that. So he had a profound impact on these people, his once captors. And if you remember too, this kind of reminds me once again of number one, Paul, when he goes to Mars Hill, right? What does he do? There's all these statues to all these gods, and they were set in their ways, so he didn't come over the top of them and beat them in the head with the word and tell them how wrong they were and they were going to hell, and kind of what a lot of Christians do today. No, he come from underneath, and he used things that they were familiar with and converted them also. There was a statue made to a unknown god. So they had like this garden with all these statues, and they had all these different gods that they worshipped. And there was just this one statue. It was kind of like they were, using the shotgun effect, spraying and covering all their bases just in case. So there was one God that was the unknown God. And so Paul used that. And he's like, yeah, you Romans are real smart people. You're well educated, and Plato and Socrates, and yeah, man, I'm right there with you. But this, unknown God that you got over here, hey, I know who that is. And he used that, and it worked beautifully. And also Jesus. Jesus taught in parables, and he told stories that were familiar to the people that they understood, right? So he taught about, shepherds and sheep, a lost sheep, or grain and wheat and tares, because this was a farming agriculture and farming people. So these were things that they were familiar with and they already accepted. So this is a great teaching tool, and St. Patrick used that shamrock beautifully to his advantage. But here's one thing that I found. You guys may or may not have seen the reel that I released. And this was something pretty cool, was actually that St. Patrick had an Elijah type moment. And once again, it's just crazy how all these correlations overlap, and there's so many similarities to all these people in the Bible and these people of God. But it says here that local legend records that in 433 A.D., on the eve of Passover, he traveled to the Hill of the Slain, and he defied the local authority and their druidic priests. And like Elijah, he lit a fire. Okay, so to set the context of this story here, this was a pagan holy day or holiday that they celebrated. The text didn't let us know, what the name of that was, but we do know that it was during the eve of Passover for Christianity. So here you have this Hill of the Slain, and then you have this big valley, and then all the way, miles and miles, a long distance away, was another hill. Okay, so a plain separated these two hills, and the other hill was known the Hill of Terra. And on the Hill of Terra is where they would perform their rites and rituals for this holiday. And the way the holiday went was, on that night, everyone, in the surrounding areas were told to not light a fire. That it was important for this ritual that the priests, the druidic priests, lit the fire, and they lit it at the Hill of Terra. And once the fire was lit there, and all the plains people could look up and see this fire, they knew the ritual had commenced, and then other people could light their fires, whether it be in their home or their fields or whatever. They had to wait for that sign or signal. Okay? So, as a slap in the face, Patrick goes to this Hill of the Slain, which was actually higher in elevation than this other Hill of Terra. So he goes up there on the eve of Passover and lights this huge bonfire. So all the people of the plains and surrounding towns seen this huge beacon of fire in the air in the middle of the night, but it wasn't coming from the Hill of Terra. So everybody was like, oh no, it's about to go down. You ever seen that reel from Kevin Hart? It's about to go down.
You chose poorly.
Right, he chose poorly, is what they were thinking anyway. So the king sees this beacon of fire, and he's pissed. So he commands his legion to go over there to the Hill of the Slain and grab whoever the hell has lit this fire and done this blasphemous thing. So they charge over there, they grab St. Patrick, and they take him into captivity. Well, once he gets in front of the king and all the people there that was, getting ready to wait to do this ceremony, he makes this proclamation and this curse. And he tells them, times 7 will your men be destroyed by the Lord if I am not released. And of course they kind of laughed at him, just threw him on in prison. Well, miraculously, that night, a large number of his legion and people, in his court, his high officials, a large number of people mysteriously died that night. Okay, so this got the king's attention. So he immediately called for the release of St. Patrick. And then when he released him, he made a public confession of Christ and recanted his old faith, and then even made a proclamation of protection and security for St. Patrick, because at this time he was dealing with a lot of hostility, you can imagine. So basically he put out a decree, this high king, and said nobody is to mess with this St. Patrick guy, because he serves the living God. Even if he's not the only God, he's obviously better than our gods, because our gods couldn't even protect us. So therefore, you leave this guy alone. So that was pretty significant event there. But yeah, this Hill of Terror, though, it had a strong tradition as a holy site, with many festivals and rituals to be held there, and it was said to be the very seat of the High King. And spoiler alert, there's some other really cool stuff in ritual stones tied with the Nephilim and the Bible from the Levant. Spoiler alert, that's all you're going to get for now, that I'm going to get to later, and it has to do with that hill. Okay, so stay tuned, okay? Like any good infomercial. But wait, if you call right now. No, I'm just playing. But, let me see here. Okay, and then I also have in here too that, but that shamrock, the reason why it worked so well was because 3 was a divine number in Ireland, which it is in a lot of places, but they had triplets of their gods. So like their harvest god, they had 3 gods over that, or the, just all these different things, storms, weather, fertility, whatever, subject matter that is. Typically they had 3 deities overseeing that particular subject. So the shamrock worked really well. And so the people that accepted Christ from the teachings of St. Patrick, they referred to God as the God with 3 faces, because he used that shamrock, to symbolize, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So the people that he converted in Ireland called it, their God, this God that they were preached to about, the God of 3 faces. Let me get me a drink real quick. But in 461 AD, March 17th, St. Patrick died of old age. And before his death, he had this to say about himself. Patrick the sinner, an unlearned man to be sure. None should ever say that it was my ignorance that accomplished any small thing. It was the gift of God. So, only this former slave had the right instincts to impart to the Irish a new story, one that made sense of all their old stories and brought them a peace they never known before. Because of Patrick, a barbarian land laid down its swords of battle, flung away the knives of sacrifice, and cast away the chains of slavery. So, if you didn't know, March 17th, that day was chosen because that was the day that St. Patrick died. So he died on March 17th, 461 AD. So, now with that said, why was these old stories, myths, and legends of this people used so well to convert them? I kind of touched on it earlier just a little bit, but because those very same stories, legends, and gods were directly from the Bible to begin with. Okay? Stay with me here. let's take a closer look at the legend of St. Patrick chasing the snakes from Ireland. There are no snakes in Ireland. So, he wasn't chasing away literal snakes. And some people have drawn the conclusion that, this is an allegory for mass genocide. And it's talking about the Roman Church going in and killing all the pagans that, that wouldn't convert. So convert or die. I think they're partially right. I think they're right that it was an allegory. But there's more. There's more to the story, excuse me. So, perhaps this allegory was talking about the serpent seed and or the Nephilim, whose stories, legends, gods are biblical, but they're twisted from a fallen angel point of view. Okay, now here's where it gets saucy. Okay, here's the part that was building up to all this stuff that got me so excited when I found this in that Nicholas DeVere book. Okay, now for some people this might get boring, but it's not. Stick with me. I'm going to get into the history of some of the people of Ireland, where they come from, their lineages, their genealogies. That way you get a better understanding of who these people actually were and why these stories are so important and how it ties directly into the Bible to the serpent seed and Nephilim fallen angels. Okay? But before I get there, I don't want to forget about you guys and just be rambling away. Let me check this chat a little bit, see what's going on, guys. Yeah, Anna, she said reading the Bible at first felt like a different language. It is. We all started there. You got to start somewhere. Okay. Yeah, 83 Golden Teacher says the Catholics carried the Bible through the Dark Ages, and St. Patrick seemed to be the real follower of Christ. It's interesting to me. It is, especially when you go back and, like I said, you look through all the correlations with all these other biblical characters and stories that this man had. It's kind of like, characteristics or calling cards of the followers of God almost. Yeah, and you followed up and said, I'm nothing but a follower of Jesus Christ. That's right, that's where we all are. And Doc, yeah, you're not a follower of mine, you're a friend of mine, brother. Or sister, I don't want to assume you're a man. Okay, Dunt says, wow, that's so very cool. Of course, I don't know what little Paul Blart fun fact there that you thought was so cool, but I'm glad you're enjoying it, brother. I even got a wow from Anna. All right, cool. I guess you guys are enjoying it, so that's awesome, because I thoroughly enjoyed it. So let's continue down this path here. And now this section, I will definitely have to be looking at the notes here, because this is stuff that I pulled through web searches, kind of copied and pasted and added my thoughts and opinions in the margins here. So this is a group of people that you are probably familiar with talking about in passing. I've had Gary Wayne on the show many times, and you've probably heard him reference the Tuatha Dé Danann, or Danann, according to how, some people pronounce it. But, if anybody's listened to Gary Wayne, he's rapid fire. He's fast, he's furious, and just, hits on things and assumes that you know all the story and backstory of everything. And a lot of times we don't. And he kept talking about this Tuatha Dé Danann and called them the fairy folk, the elven race, and all this kind of stuff. And at first, I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. I thought he was talking about a tribe of giants or something like that. And it wasn't until I read his book, and then I was like, okay, he gave me a little more context, but he didn't really go deep into it, like, the origins, who they are, where they come from, all that kind of stuff. So then I found Nicholas DeVere, the Dragon Court. And he goes into great detail about these people, because he claims that the dragon court, the serpent seed, that's who they stem from. That's a branch of that family tree. And DeVere says that he comes directly from those people. So he goes into great detail in his book. And this is where I found that nugget I told you about that just made me jump out of my seat, because it connected so many dots. And I think that's what's great about being a researcher. You'll read hundreds of books, all these different books from all these different authors, all these different points of views, and you get to take little pieces from everybody. And then you put them into a pile and you make a mosaic picture. And you will get a more complete picture that way. That's been my experiences. And I'm a treasure hunter. When I find this stuff, I get excited, and I want to share them with you guys. So this is no exception here. So I'm going to give you a backstory of the Tuatha Dé Danann, okay? Because these are the people, the ancestors of the people of Ireland that St. Patrick had to come in and free from their bondage from these other gods, okay? So, the Tuatha Dé Danann, it's Irish and usually translated as folk of the goddess Danu, also known by an earlier name, Tuatha Dé. So, the oldest terms they have to describe these people doesn't have the Danann or the Danu. It just says Tuatha Dé. And so that's the original. So when you go to the original, it just means tribe of gods. I mean, that's pretty in your face right there. They're claiming they are gods. They're a tribe of gods. Or divine tribe. But either way, same. We're talking about the same thing here. They're claiming to be gods. So it says, they are a supernatural race in Irish mythology. Okay, so we know how mythologies are, right? A lot of people want to use that term and just, okay, throw it away. It's not real. No, we know better than that, folks, don't we? Well, at least we do. It says, many of them are thought to represent deities of pre-Christian Gaelic Ireland. The Tuatha Dé Danann are often depicted as kings, queens, druids, bards, warriors, heroes, healers, and craftsmen who have supernatural powers. It sounds a lot like Genesis 6, don't it, folks? It sounds a lot like the Native Americans of North America and the Sky People, don't it, folks? It sounds a lot like Quasi-Kettle, right? And I can't remember the other guy's name now, but yeah. It doesn't matter where you go. It sounds a lot like the Hindus and their gods, right? It sounds like the Olympians, don't it? I mean, there's a reason, folks, why all these stories rhyme, because it stems from an ancient source. But it says that these gods, these Tuatha Dé Danann, they dwell in the other world, but interact with humans and the human world. They are associated with the Sadi, and this is prominent ancient burial mounds. Now, when I found that really perked my ear up, okay? We have a lot of those around the world, and especially in North America, right? And the natives tell you, we don't know who built these. We just found them. We thought it was pretty cool, so we just kind of added to it and hung around. You know what I'm saying? So these guys are associated with these mounds, which are entrances to the other world realms. So they are claiming in their ancient legends and mythology that the Tuatha Dé Danann are a tribe of gods with supernatural powers who dwell in the other world, and the mounds are the doorways that they built to the other realms. So I have here as my notes into the footnotes that this reminds me of the theory how the giants in the Levant were fleeing from Joshua and Caleb during the cleansing of the Holy Land, right? And if you guys have followed me for any amount of time, I really champion Fritz Zimmerman and L.A. Marzulli's theory. that during the Great Diaspora, that's what they called it, that when Joshua, Caleb, and the boys come out of Exodus and started cleansing the Holy Land of these Nephilim giant tribes, the smart ones took off and fled. They went north. And that's where you start to see this Nephilimic Phoenician cultures and stamps starting to branch out into the Mediterranean, into Scythia, Rome, Ireland, Britain, all these different places. And we already know that the Phoenicians were a seafaring people. So they proposed this idea that they loaded up on their ships, and just like Ragnar Lothbrok, they went west and they found the Americas. And they theorized that the water levels were higher then. And so there was a direct channel going from the Atlantic Ocean straight into the Great Lakes. And we know that there is an island bordering between Canada and the United States in the Great Lakes called Isle Royale or Royale Island. It's one of those two. I can't remember exactly. But they found a large copper mine. And it's within the hundreds of thousands of tons of copper that is missing, that they know has been pulled from here. And that is the purest copper in the world. It tests at like 98.8% purity, so it has a very distinct marker. And they've tested copper throughout the world. Europe, Asia, Japan, China, everywhere. And they find this 98.8% purity copper. So we know where it come from, because these giants, these Phoenicians, this serpent seed Nephilimic type people come to America fleeing from Joshua and Caleb and mined all this copper, and then started trading, taking it back and forth all over the world and trading and selling it. So these people, in my opinion, were fueling the Bronze Age. And from there, they followed the Ohio River straight down through the Ohio River Valley. And that's why you have all of these really condensed portions of land just full of mounds and these earthwork structures, because they were made by these people. And to further prove that point, they have found a large stone up there next to Isle Royale that I had mentioned earlier. This huge stone with a distinct Phoenician-style ship carved into the stone. You know, these Phoenician ships had, markers that set them apart from all the others. So they know that was who was there. They left their mark. It's kind of like in the bathroom when you were a kid, you took out your Sharpies or your pocket knife and you scratch, JB was here, 98. That's what they did. Nothing new's under the sun, Solomon says. And that great new arc hinge, huge. Fritz Zimmerman just found out a couple years ago and verified it with film and photography that the open doorway of that hinge lines up perfectly with the sunrise of May 1st, which is Beltane, the god of the Phoenicians, folks. And then also you go up to New Hampshire, you have America's Stonehenge, right? They found this stone in one of the collapsed chambers over there, and it had this distinct writing on it that they couldn't decipher. They didn't know what it was. So they took pictures and sent it to all these college professors, wanting to know, what kind of language was this? Who wrote this? And they ended up catching the attention of Dr. Barry Fell, who is a doctor of ancient dead languages from Harvard. And he said, I think I know what it is, but I don't want to, come right out and say it till I can be there in person. I want to examine these things more thoroughly before I tell you something. And so they allowed him to come up and check out the stone, and he did a rubbing on it, made a copy, and he told them, he said, I think this is ancient Phoenician writing. And the inscription says, this is a paraphrase. You can search this up and find the exact for yourself. But basically it says, we dedicate this site, we the Phoenicians dedicate this site to Baal. So we have all kinds of archaeological clues that kind of coincide and prove this theory that these Nephilim went west out of fear of being exterminated by Joshua and Caleb and the boys during the Exodus and the cleansing of the Holy Land. So, I think that's interesting that even history records this Tuatha Dé Danann had an obsession with mounds, and that it was a doorway to the other world in their realm. So continuing on, it says that, and then in some texts they even explain these Tuatha Dé, not the Danu. So this is the oldest form. You know, the Tuatha Dé Danann is a later rendition. The oldest rendition of these people is just Tuatha Dé. So in some of the oldest texts that they find, these Tuatha Dé are described as fallen angels. Yeah, I had to read that twice because I was already formulating all this stuff in my head, right? You know, as we do. And then I come to that, I was like, okay, somebody else was on this also. But so once again, this goes back to my claim above. One explanation of their name associates them with the Semitic peoples from the Levant. Okay, now check this out. That was a little bit of a spoiler. They have found etymologically, okay, with words, the root words, going straight back to these people that I've just talked about. Because before it was just kind of theory. It was kind of, oh, well, this looks like this, and so maybe it's this. But no, we can even prove it etymologically with words. So, here's this. It says, an alternative etymological hypothesis explains away the Danann, and remember that was later rendition, as a newly coined tack-on word, merely added to the original form of Tuatha Dé, and I've already talked about that. But it says, to avoid confusion, the reason why they added this Danann was to avoid confusion with the same term Tuatha Dé, used in a different sense, denoting, wait for it, the Israelites, and I'm probably going to pronounce or butcher this pronouncing, plebis die of the Bible. Let it breathe for a minute. The original name, the Tuatha Dé, was the same word, but in a different language, so it doesn't look the same side by side, obviously, but it's the same root words etymologically as some Semitic-speaking Israelites mentioned in the Bible. Ding, 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 Yahtzee, folks. Okay? Tell them what they've won, Johnny. Come on down. I mean, gosh, man. That's why I get excited about this stuff, man. So, continuing on, it says, so compare the Irish Neneus, a.k.a. Lebor Breshnach, which is a god of theirs, which glosses the Tuatha Dé Danann as plebos diorum, and that's that word that I mentioned earlier that I said I'd probably butcher, as God folk in a passage admixed in the Latin Vulgate. I mean, gosh. Stuff like that is what really just wets my whistle. Okay, so continuing on, it says, according to the Lebor Gabla Eren, and once again, I probably just butchered that all to pieces, but it says, that's a legend book writing. They came to Ireland, and they is the Tuatha Dé. They came to Ireland from the far reaches of the north. Okay, we're talking about Scythia here, right? We're talking about Gog and Magog here. How many times in the Old Testament specifically, when God pronounces judgment on his people, right? Isaiah and all these other passages, where does it say that these enemies come from? The far reaches of the north, right? Where does Satan in some of the passages like Isaiah, where does his throne and all these peoples come from? The far reaches of the north. He says he will ascend to heaven and be like the Most High and set his throne in the far reaches of the north. Okay, there's so many correlations here. But it says that they came to Ireland from the far reaches of the north in dark clouds and landed on the mountains of Kamanisi in Konacha. And like I said, I might be butchering these words. Otherwise known as Salab and Aran. And it says in quotations, and they brought a darkness over the sun for 3 days and 3 nights. They immediately burnt their ships so that they should not think of retreating to them. And the smoke and the mist that came up from the vessels filled the neighboring land and air. Therefore it was conceived that they had arrived in clouds of mists. So here once again, sounds a lot like the book of Enoch, doesn't it, folks? These fallen angels descended and fell down on a mountain, Mount Hermon. We were just talking about these Phoenicians and their ships. They arrived on all these ships, and they burnt their ships because it was succeed or die. There was no retreat. So I'll keep going here. It says, according to their legends, the Tuatha Dé and the Andi, whose origin the learned do not know, but that it seems likely to them they came from heaven, on the account of their intelligence and for their excellence of their knowledge. So it describes them as, as gods. They fell from heaven. They had supernatural abilities, and they had all this intelligence and knowledge. And their stories and legends talk about they civilized the people, just like all the other legends around the world. They brought the forbidden knowledge. Like Prometheus, they brought the fire and shared with them the forbidden knowledge of heaven. I mean, there has to be a point where some people, I don't see how, I'm not talking about you guys, but there has to be a point where some of these people that are non-believers or skeptics that look at this kind of stuff and be like, there has to be a point where coincidence gets very thin. I think they're just truly in denial at this point. So if I keep going, and guys, I've not even hit the crescendo yet. Stay with me. You think this stuff is good, you just wait. I'm building here. I'm building a tower here. So they were known for their intelligence and excellence in their knowledge. When they came, they were said to have brought 4 magical items with them. 4 pieces of technology, I guess you could say, right? So it says they called them the 4 jewels. These 4 items were said to have come from the 4 cities from their lands in the north. It mentions only the Laphael as having been imported from across the sea. So remember, they were from this other world, right? These mounds were the gateways, right? They're saying that these 3 out of the 4 jewels came from the other world. That only 1 was imported across the sea. So now, you guys remember the story of St. Patrick that I just talked about, lighting the fire. okay, at the hill of the slain. And then across the valley was that hill of Terra. And remember I'd said that that was a important ritualistic site. They would kick off all their festivals and burnt offerings and all this stuff at that place. And that it was also known as the high seat, of the king. This ties in with one of those 4 sacred items brought from the other world. Okay, so like I said, so you remember that this Leafael that I mentioned that was actually brought across the sea was brought to that hill and set up as a holy place by the Tuatha Dé Danann. This was also known as the Stone of Destiny. So that story of St. Patrick that I just told you guys earlier, that hill of Terra, there was this huge stone that was said to have been brought from the gods was there. That's why it was so important. And they called it, one of the names was the Stone of Destiny. For those that's not familiar with some of the other creation legends and stuff of the Middle East and the Levant, to me that rhymes a whole lot with the Enuma Elish, the creation epic of the Levant, where I'm proposing, or I have proposed already that is where these people come from. They're taking their stories and legends with them, but they're changing over time. Okay? To me, that sounds a whole lot like the Tablets of Destiny in that story of the Enuma Elish. So, but another name that they call it is the Speaking Stone. And it was a coronation stone for the High King. That when they were selecting a king, they would gather around this stone, and that kind of like King Arthur and the sword inside of the stone, this stone picks the king. And they called it the Stone of Destiny, or the Speaking Stone. And it was on this hill of Terra that has a direct story with St. Patrick. So if you are joining the live late, that's near the front of the episode. So you definitely want to go back and check that story out. Or follow me on social media, Instagram and Facebook and all the other places. I did a reel today talking about that incident. So, continuing on, like I said, I'm building to the crescendo. Wait, it's worth it, man. Anticipation is key. The second item was the Spear of Lu. And Lu is a Tuatha Dé god. He was a king of the people. And it said that whoever held this spear never lost in battle and made the wielder invincible. Spear of Destiny. The third item was a sword of Nada. And once again, this is another Tuatha Dé Danann, described like the spear mentioned earlier, and it was a flaming sword. What other flaming sword would fallen angels and their offspring, the Nephilim, know about? Interesting, right? I think so. Is this the flaming sword that guards the way to the tree of life? Are they trying to imitate that? That's what they do, right? They like to imitate things. And the fourth item is the Cauldron of Dagda. And it doesn't really go into great detail, or it probably does somewhere, but the stuff that I was reading didn't. So we don't know if this is a cauldron that makes spells, potions, or food, or what. We just know it's a cauldron. But the legend of the writing that I had read, it just said, it was said that no company ever left it unsatisfied. So whatever they come to try to accomplish at this cauldron, it did the deed. It took care of the job. Okay, now we're getting close to the crescendo. Okay, I'll give you all that, maybe some people thought boring background, because I'm building a foundation, and now we're going to go up because we got a firm foundation laid here. Eventually, these fair/fairy folk were overtaken when the Goldels, also known as the Melcenes, took control of Ireland. It took 3 battles to defeat the Tuatha Dé Danann, and it is said that the Tuatha Dé were forced to live underground in the Seed. And this is another word, or their word, for the other world, which, once again, the mounds were the doors or gateways to the other side. So they were defeated and forced to go to the other world. Tartarus, anyone? So after their defeat, Mac Lear, who was their high king at this time and during these battles with this other group of people, kind of rhymes with the Olympian gods, the Titans, and the Olympian gods battling over control of the earth, and the loser had to go into the underworld or the other world. I mean, so many things rhyme, folks. But it said that he protected the surviving members scattered in the Seed by casting over the veil of the 5th Fiada. So we have some magical, like, protection spell barrier things to keep them from crossing over and, like, invading their territory, I guess. Okay. Now, with all that said, these Tuatha Dé, they became the gods venerated by the later druids. These are the deities that St. Patrick had to battle directly. That's who he was dealing with. That is who he was trying to free the druids and the Irish people from. Because once again, these were actual, deities. They were described as fallen angels and gods. There was a power struggle. They were defeated, forced into the underworld, and communicated with this world as gods. So, with all the background established, remember the story of St. Patrick chasing out the serpents from Ireland. There were no snakes on the island of Ireland. Some believe this was allegory for mass genocide of the pagans. Like I said earlier, I believe they're halfway right. It was an allegory. But he was chasing off the gods that they worshipped. And I'm talking about the Tuatha Dé and their descendants, the Serpent Seed. So, now, you ready for the fun part, okay? I found this in Nicholas de Vere's book, The Dragon Legacy. Now, you talking about putting a pretty bow on all of this, Daddy. When the Romans encountered the Danann king Brudini, described earlier, I had that quote, for their demon strength and battle courage, they labeled these people Picts, Picts, the Picts. But he says in his book that they were falsely labeled Picts. He says, this morphed over the years to describe the elven race. So it's looping back. So all this theory and stuff I've been telling you, these other legends and lore and Roman encounters are confirming it. Okay, so over the years it morphed to describe the elven race, now known as the Pixies. Okay, you still with me here? These beings would come to be known as, you ready for it? Leprechauns. Bang! Okay, it ain't over yet. I'm going to tell you the whys. Okay, these people were later known as the leprechauns. A mistranslation was applied to the leprechauns, and they were known as small-bodied. But actually, the proper translation is scaly bodies. What has scales, folks? Serpents do, right? What did Paul have covering his eyes? And he was able to see the light. It says the scales fell from his eyes, right? He was blinded by the serpent. So, this leprechauns and the pixies, in their original etymology, was mistakenly labeled as small-bodied. That's where we get the midget leprechauns, right? But no, it actually means scaly-bodied. So, from the Latin word lepra, as in describing the scales of leprosy, okay? This could be referring to that. Maybe these people had, scaly skin and they had leprosy. Maybe. It's a possibility. Or more likely, they're describing the fish scale type armor which was common to the Draconians. Yeah, I ain't done. Hold on. After all, the Danann peoples originated from the land of Scythia. And the Pict term applies to painted. Why did the Romans name them Picts? Implying they were painted. Maybe they're talking about their tattoos. So, here we have pale skin, blonde hair, blue-eyed, tattooed people with scaly armor known as the fair folk, who was also known as, wait for it, the Shining Ones. Let it breathe, let it breathe. Just like their father, the Nakash, whose name means exactly that, the Shining One. This also explains why the oldest form of leprechaun was attached to small water beings. Now, we know that small was a mistranslation, right? When we go to the etymology of the root words. I've done showed you that. So if we flip that to the proper translation, what does that say? It turns from small water beings to scaly water beings. And through all the things I've showed you repeatedly over this past hour and 20 minutes, they were known seamen, just like the Phoenicians. Boom. That is my grand finale and build up to that. And that little section right there about the leprechaun and the scales is what I found in that book, The Dragon Legacy by Nicholas de Vere, and that's what led to all of this rabbit hole deep dive search, and it just went hand in glove. You couldn't have got it no more perfect. I think it was a divine revelation, folks. And it ain't because I'm smart or this great researcher. No, it's just I'm looking for the right stuff, and God's aiding me, I believe. But yeah, that was the journey this week, guys. So I hope you enjoyed that. I don't know, throw me some likes or some ones in the chat if you found this just as enlightening as I did. I hope some of you enjoyed it and had a good time, because I thoroughly had a good time researching it and talking to you guys about it. So that is the grand finale here. But I had rambled for a while in my excitement and hadn't checked out the chat. So I'm going to check in with you guys and kind of see maybe some of the stuff that you guys were talking about as I was so excitedly rambling. Okay, Leslie. She's heard of them called the Tadanu. Yeah. Garrett. The Phoenicians were primarily worshippers of Baal. That's right. A Canaanite deity of fertility, rain, and storms. Baal was a central figure in their polytheistic religion, often revered as the supreme male god. Yes, I concur. Okay, 83 Gold Teachers said it also sounds like the Lakota as well. I did. That's a possibility. You talking about the Lakota tribes? I wonder what the etymology of that actually comes to. See Black Ink, loving it. I'm glad you enjoy it, man. I've definitely enjoyed it, man. I've had such a good time just going through this stuff. And Leslie, again, the North could mean the North Pole. It could very well be the far reaches of the North, because we know that the Scythians and all that was up there near the Russian border, the far reaches of the North, the snowy hell. Okay. Yeah, Garrett, that's something I definitely want to look into too, man. I've heard bits and pieces about it and seen reels about it, but I've not deep dived on it yet. So that's something I definitely need to. And for those that are listening on the audio after the fact, he's saying, bro, I truly hope you start talking about Mount Hermon and the Board of Peace and the reconciliation with 200 seats on top of their pyramid building. Yeah, that was definitely wild. We got somebody else saying, yeah, it's Antarctica maybe for the far reaches of the North. Oh, we got a wow. I wowed somebody. Nice. And Dunt, he got a what? I even got a sound bite for that one, brother. What? Yep, leprechaun and leprosy. I mean, it's just wild, man. This all the little connective tissue that I found looking through this stuff. Yes, Jam the Vril. I got a book from Robert Zephyr on the Vril Society that I'm going to be reading into here pretty soon. Okay, 83 Gold Teachers. That's Megtallica. Love you guys. You can follow me on Instagram and always liking and commenting on my stuff. I appreciate that. Oh man, that's awesome, guys. It looks like you guys have definitely enjoyed it so far, and I definitely appreciate you coming in and nerding out with me and allowing me to nerd out with you guys. Once again, just had a real good time. So guys, man, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you guys for coming out, and I hope you guys have a great Valentine's Day. No, I'm just playing. Hope you guys have a good St. Patrick's Day. I hope that this was enlightening. I hope you heard something that you haven't heard before, learned a little bit of history about St. Patrick. I hope that some of the theories and histories and the biblical stuff that I tried to weave and tie in made sense to you, and that you were edified by it, because I sure was. But if you guys are new to the channel, hey man, welcome to the hero's journey. Be sure and join us, man. I'm putting out multiple episodes a week. I guarantee put out 2 episodes a week now, guaranteed, but it's usually 3 or more. But Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the channel, I do a premiere with a live chat every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. Every Sunday night, we are doing a live study of Louis Ginsburg, Legends of the Jews. We are now on our 14th. No, I'm sorry. We just completed our 14th study. This coming Sunday will be the 15th. Same bat time, same bat channel, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. Join us for the live study, man. Love you guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a great week. And if all else fails, I will see you Sunday night. But the All Access Pass members, tomorrow morning, you guys get a bonus episode, and the public gets a little bit over an hour of it. So we're going to get into the Antichrist. I talked to Tim Cohen, and he poses the question, is King Charles the Antichrist from the book of Revelation? Very, very stimulating conversation, to say the least. But guys, hey, just remember, as I always say, the difference between the known and the unknown, it's the journey. So good journey, guys.
Towns built out of borrowed light, thrones wiring into fear, truth chained high on mountain walls while vultures circle near.